This message is sponsored by...
Hey, Ogimaa, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. I'm here to ask you for your support. Finding honest Native-centered news is not easy. But with your support, we're able to provide accurate information about Standing Rock, Line 3, treaty violations, and COVID-19 in our Native communities. Please visit Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon and donate if you can. That's Native Roots Radio Network on Patreon. Pinigigi, and thank you for your support.
Navigating COVID while protecting yourself can be difficult. Fortunately, there's a hotline you can call with any questions. The Department of Indian Work St. Paul partnered with the Minnesota Department of Health to open the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline. They provide information on vaccines, booster shots, and testing sites. Right now, booster shots are available to anyone over the age of 18 for those who are eligible. The Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline can also help with housing, food, medical, and educational support. If you or someone you know has questions about COVID-19, vaccinations, booster shots, or testing, please call 651-304-9986. Again, the number is 651-304-9986. The American Indian COVID-19 hotline is open for calls Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Call the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline at 651-304-9986.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Partly cloudy tonight with a low of 54, then a slight chance of showers on Tuesday with a high of 72. Be ready for summer's heat with a cool deal from Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. Right now, take $850 off a new AC or ductless unit with payments as low as $65 a month. Go to standardheating.com.
Portions of Native Roots Radio may be pre-recorded.
It's a good day to be indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Couldn't cut, hitting cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanja Hade. Hey, Cudahy to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. We discuss local and national Native news and events, and as you know, Wendy, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Native Roots Trading Post, located at 700 Nicollet Mall in downtown Minneapolis. We're on the first floor of the Dayton's building, and I believe we're closing for the summer the end of this month. So get down there for all your Native American art and merchandise.
Well, another thing, too, to remember is that we have a great online store that's really been picking up, and that'll always be open as long as I'm alive, Wendy.
That's great. And we're also at powwows.
Yeah, definitely. We were just last week at
Harriet Island. Yep.
Yeah, Harriet Island and Young's powwow, and that was really fun. And the week before Prairie Island, and so yeah. So Wendy, before we get any farther into our chit chat here, let's get to Ogimaa with the news, where you don't hear this news anywhere else. So really excited to have Ogimaa on. Welcome, Ogimaa.
Hi, Ani Buju, everybody. I'm Ogimaa Giniw Ikwe. I'm from the Red Lake Nation in northern Minnesota, and I have news for you and events coming up here on Native Roots Radio. First and foremost, I would like to offer condolences to the family of Renee Kathy Van Nett. Renee was a second term city councilor in Duluth, past council president, and a Leech Lake band member who passed away late last week after a brief battle with cancer. She was 52. There is services that are happening in the Duluth area. It looks like it was posted that services will be Sunday through Tuesday. So that was this previous Sunday through tomorrow. So tonight is the wake starting at 6 p.m. with ceremony and feast at 7 p.m. And that will take place at the Deck in Duluth, which is the Duluth Entertainment and Convention Center's Harborside Ballroom. You can tell the parking attendant in that area that you're there for Renee's services, and they will direct you in the right direction. So our prayers go out to the Leech Lake community and, the city of Duluth for losing a council member as well. My understanding is that her death was rather sudden. So it really hurts when we have our relatives who are struck so quickly with those things. So I wanted to start there. The other thing I wanted to mention is that it's not this weekend, but it's the following weekend is the first of the Shell River Revival events, which are happening at the Shell River Camp or Shell City Campground near Huntersville State Forest in Monaga, Minnesota. And this will be the first of three revivals or basically reunions that are going to be happening for water protectors and allies to join for a free 3 weekends at the Shell City Campground. They're going to serve food. There'll be an opportunity to share updates on the work to protect the Shell River. And they're working on creating the Shell River Coalition. So it's going to be really awesome. I think there's going to be events happening too, like horseback riding and music. June is going to be open mic. So June 17th through 19th will be an open mic night. July is going to be Corey Medina's band or Corey Medina performing. And then August 27th, they're going to have Annie Humphrey, who's been doing and touring a lot for the I guess against the Huber Mill in northern Minnesota. The Huber engineered woods mill is, without tribal consultation or consent, planning to build a massive polluting OSB manufacturing facility in 1855 treaty territory, and that's going to be within 1 mile of the Leech Lake Reservation. And she has been doing a lot of touring and concerts throughout Minnesota, talking to people about why this is important that this does not get constructed. If constructed, the Huber Mill plans to cut more than 400,000 cords of wood each year, all within a 100-mile radius of the plant. So that's just totally decimating forests in north central Minnesota. I don't I don't really want to think about the amount of wood that is, but if you have interest in getting involved to help stop the Huber OSB manufacturing facility or Huber Engineered Woods, make sure you go over to protectmnforest.org, and that is going to be, again, protectmnforest.org. Other events that are coming up here for our relatives in Wisconsin who are now starting to fight Line 5. On June 25th, there's going to be the People United by Water event, which is going to be an event that allows people to get together to talk about and plan for ways to help shut down the Line 5 pipeline in Wisconsin. If you want more information, you want to go to wisconsinline5.com/communities united by water 2022. I don't believe this is the first year that they've done this event. And it seems like it's going to be, the lineup for this event is amazing. It runs Friday, June 24th, all the way through Sunday, June 26th. And they're going to have everything from music to vendor booths to food to traditional ceremonies and speakers. They're going to have David Huckfeld there. They're going to be playing traditional games. This is honestly going to be a really, really happening event. Robert, I don't know if we can try to get out there, but it's going to be really awesome, and I'm pretty excited to see that. And it's going to be at Bayview Park in Wisconsin, which Robert, do you happen to know what that's close by?
The equator? No, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yes.
But I do have Google
Ashland,
Maps,
I'm
and it
sorry,
takes
it's
me
Ashland, Wisconsin. I just found it here. So it's gonna be near at Bayview Park in Ashland, Wisconsin. So those of us who are listening in Wisconsin who just realized I don't know my geography. So thank you so much for your patience with me. Um, the other thing I wanted to touch base on today too, Robert, really quickly is did you hear about Biden's nominee for the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs for running the IHS services?
No, who's that?
Her name is Rosalind So, TSO, and she's a citizen of the Navajo Nation. So this past Wednesday, she went to a committee meeting talking about how she would ensure the health agency, IHS or Indian Health Service, which has faced God knows how many challenges throughout its history and is chronically underfunded, meets its trust responsibilities, its federal trust responsibilities to Native people. And Biden announced her nomination back on March 9th. But right now, the committee hasn't taken any action on the nomination during this last hearing. And they didn't question her qualifications, but mostly focused on how she was going to address the challenges, including a population with high rates of chronic health conditions, lower life expectancy, and struggles recruiting and retaining qualified providers. So, plus, coming in after the COVID-19 pandemic. So, I think it's a really good sign that they did not question her qualifications and really just focused on how she was going to address the challenges. But the really, really cool part about this story, Robert, is she introduced herself in Navajo
Yeah.
and thanked her friends and family for supporting her and said that her personal experiences as a Navajo woman and working as a tribal health administrator gave her this understanding of what IHS patients need. So she is coming directly from the field, and that's really exciting. And I want to give a big thanks to Indian Country Today for putting that story up so I could kind of recap it for you guys. And then one more piece to this too, if she's confirmed, she would oversee 26 IHS hospitals and nearly 90 health centers and other facilities. There's about 15,000 healthcare professionals that are employed in 37 states. But for those small numbers, 2.6 million Indigenous people rely on IHS for their healthcare. So that's what she's
Wow.
up against for this.
Wow, that's excellent, though. We're so used to white saviors running our organizations that help our people. So good to hear. Hey, we're going to shake it up a little bit. We're going to have Dr. Stately on a little later today. But next up, Wendy with her sacred animal portion. We're excited to hear that and learn more. So you are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake.
Stay with us.
If the statistics say that 1 in 3 Native women and 1 in 6 Native men have experienced sexual assault in their lifetime, it means our whole community is affected by sexual violence. 1 is too many. Don't stand by, stand up. Don't engage in acts of sexual violence and shut down the dirty jokes, the gossip, the victim blaming and shaming. As a community, we can change the way we respond. Contact the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition to attend a workshop to learn more.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Navigating COVID while protecting yourself can be difficult. Fortunately, there's a hotline you can call with any questions. The Department of Indian Work St. Paul partnered with the Minnesota Department of Health to open the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline. They provide information on vaccines, booster shots, and testing sites. Right now, booster shots are available to anyone over the age of 18 for those who are eligible. The Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline can also help with housing, food, medical, and educational support. If you or someone you know has questions about COVID-19, vaccinations, booster shots, or testing, please call 651-304-9986. Again, the number is 651-304-9986. The Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline is open for calls Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Call the Twin Cities American Indian COVID-19 hotline at 651-304-9986.
Hey, Ogimaa, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Howling for Wolves, protecting wolves for future generations.
How?
Robert didn't know I was going to do that, so he didn't have the wolf picture ready to shoot out.
Wendy, you sound, there it is. Ooh. Wendy, you sound excited about coming home here. I'm really happy that...
Yeah, I'll be back on Wednesday.
Right on. Hey, so I want to introduce Wendy, reintroduce her, the co-host of Native Roots Radio, and we talk about our sacred animals, which are our relatives, almost every day here, and we've been doing it for 5 years, and I learned so much, Wendy, so thank you, and let her rip.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. It's my pleasure always, as I always say that. My name is Hanaji Hihani, and that means cares for them. I was given that name by my Dega Curtis. Curtis goes by Mashke Hanajinga, which means walks on white clouds. I'm a humane policy volunteer leader for the Humane Society of the United States. And I work on animal issues at the local and state level, and it's always my pleasure to do that. I usually never do this, but today I'm going to be reading from a blog. And I don't read from blogs is because just about anybody could write a blog, right? So this guy is Umar Huq. And he's a British economist. He's previously blogged in the Harvard Business Review. He's an author, and he was the director of the Havas Media Lab. And I read a little bit about him. And also our very own Robert Blake, who does the Solar News with the Solar Bear on Tuesdays, also had his article and his blog on his news feed on Facebook. So this guy's pretty legit, and I want to talk about this. And he writes a blog, "The Age of Extinction is Here. Some of us just don't know it yet. We're crossing the threshold of sustainability, and there's no going back. Survivability." So what? I'm not going to read the whole thing. My friends in the Indian subcontinent tell me stories these days that seem like science fiction. The heat wave there is pushing the boundaries of survivability. My other sister says that in the old, beautiful city of artists and poets, eagles are falling dead from the sky. They are just dropping dead and landing on houses, monuments, shops. They can't fly anymore. All the water and their dried up water sources there are causing really bad dehydration for these animals. And rescuers are picking up dozens of exhausted and dehydrated birds dropping every day. They just can't fly anymore. The streets, she said, are lined with dead things. Dogs, cats, cows, animals of all kinds are just there, dead. They've perished in the killing heat. They just can't survive. People, too, try to flee. They run indoors, spend the day in canals and rivers and lakes, and those who can't, too, line the streets, passed out, pushed to the edge. They're poor countries. We won't know how many this heat wave has killed, and some won't even be counted. Think about that for a moment. Really stop and think about it. Stop the automatic motions of everyday life you go through and just think about it. You see, my Western friends read stories like this, and then they go back to obsessing over the Kardashians or Wonder Woman or Johnny Depp or Batman. They don't understand yet, because this is beyond the limits of what Homo sapiens can really comprehend, the event. That world is coming for them too. The analogy is often used to describe climate change of frogs in a boiling pot isn't useful. It's useful, but only to a certain degree. When the pot boils, they're taken out and eaten. We were in a boiling pot, and now we're at the stage where we're about to get taken out and eaten. This is when things start to get really, really bad, really, really fast. The way that I've come to think of the event, a species that has been around for 300,000 years now, having altered the climate in ways that haven't happened for millions of years, triggering an extinction event, is this. Imagine a black hole. Humanity's lined up before it. Everyone has to march through. Some are at the front of the line. They reach the other side first. Some are at the back of the line. They're still laughing and joking and pretending, maybe. Nobody much hears from those who've gone through because, well, it's a black hole. But on the other side, nothing is ever going to be the same again. This is where we are now. We are at the threshold of a cataclysm. Some of us now are crossing over to the other side of a different planet, one that's going to become unlivable. This isn't going to happen or might happen. It is actually happening now. Those, my friends, for example, an Indian subcontinent where eagles are falling dead from the sky, where the streets are lined with dead things. Extinction, the event. You can literally see it happening there. There are the first ones through the event horizon, if you'd like. The lip of the black hole. They are canaries in the coal mine. My Indian and Pakistani and Bengali friends, they're on the other side and are experiencing the world in the event. And that world is coming for all of us. I don't use the word climate change to describe any of this because, well, they're inadequate. The way that we will tell has to lead a kind of shocking sense and apathy and ignorance about the reality of what we face. People read the science and think that if the temperature rises by 1 degree, 2, 3, what's the big deal? Who cares? That's not even a hot day. Wrong. A better way to tell that story is something like this. On average, when the temperature rises 1 degree, the seasons change by a factor of 10 at the equator regions. 1 degree, 1.5, which is where we are now, the summers are 10 to 15 degrees Celsius hotter. So I know that we don't use Celsius here in the United States. They use it everywhere elsewhere in the world. So the summers are 10 to 15 degrees Celsius hotter. So 10 degrees Celsius is 50 degrees Fahrenheit. 15 degrees Celsius is 59 degrees Fahrenheit. It's already 50 degrees Celsius in the subcontinent. Spain is bracing for an extreme heat wave of about 40 degrees plus, as is Europe, as much as of America. That's at 1 degree or so of global warming. At 2 degrees, the subcontinent hits 60 degrees Celsius. At 60 degrees Celsius, that's 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Regions by the equator hit 70 degrees Celsius or more. 70 degrees Celsius is 158 degrees Fahrenheit. Spain and Europe hit 60 degrees Celsius, which is 140 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm sure that some quibble with the interpretation, so go ahead and adjust however you'd like. It doesn't really matter. At 50 degrees, which is where the subcontinent is now, life dives off. The birds fall from the sky. The streets become mass graves. People flee and try to just survive. Energy grids begin to break. Economy grids to a halt. Extinction happens. This is a threshold. We are already hitting it. We can see it now and starting. in startling, grim, vivid detail. The event is not one of abstraction or prediction. Extinction is now really happening in plain sight in places around the globe, and there are revealing to us the limits of what our civilization can survive. The limit is hit somewhere between 40 and 50 degrees Celsius. Again, 40 degrees Celsius is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. 50 degrees Celsius is 122 degrees Fahrenheit. And life as we know it becomes to an end. My Western friends still don't really grasp this at all. They imagine that if the seasons just get hotter, we could simply turn up the air conditioning. Sorry, it doesn't work like that. Why not? Not just because energy grids will fail, or even because a certain point air conditioning just fails. It's because of life. My Western friends don't think these days. They think it's a fantasy turning up the air conditioning and sitting in your apartment or your house. They ignore the now obvious signs. Birds falling from the sky, dead things lining the streets. What are you going to do and sit in your air-conditioned home while everything else goes extinct? It doesn't work like that. Those things, beings are beings, birds, cows, sheep, chickens, whatever. They provide us with the basics too. They perish, we perish. Insects nourish our soil. Birds eat insects, and on and on. My Western friends don't understand that we're a part of a system, ecosystems in this case. And as their foundations are ripped out, we can scarcely survive. The idea that you can sit in your air-conditioned home in the comfortable while everything else goes extinct is a fantasy, a delusion. What will you eat? Who will turn the soil? Who will keep the crops healthy? Where will the basis of life come from?
Thank you, Wendy. Up next, Dr. Stately.
Stay with us.
J&S Bean Factory is a native-owned, community-supported, cozy, artsy coffee shop which offers roasted on-site beans, live music, and baked goods. Relax in the beautiful outside patio. City Pages writes, voted top 10 coffee shops. Tucked into a quiet corner of St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood, this coffee shop roasts beans on-site from the best coffee-growing countries in the world. Located at 1518 Randolph Avenue, St. Paul. The good stuff.
We are your relatives,
We are your relations,
brothers,
sisters,
sons.
daughters.
And some of us are your grandchildren.
We are your community. Historically, we held places of honor and respect. Because of the impact of colonization, some of us are rejected, thrown out from family, friends, and community, set up as targets for sexual violence, sex trafficked, humiliated, tortured, and murdered. Everybody has the right to be safe. We are your relatives. Remember,
Homophobia is not traditional.
Sponsored by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Hi, Minnesota. This is Tom Hartman. Join me every weekday from 11 to 2 for in-depth analysis of what's happening in politics today on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Seward Co-op is now offering convenient self-serve and prepackaged hot options and salad bars at both the Franklin and Friendship stores. Breakfast items available daily until 11 a.m. and brunch served all day every Sunday. Their weekly lunch and dinner menus highlight cuisines from around the world. They offer vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free options daily. 95% of the ingredients used are organic from small-scale, local community food producers whenever possible. More at seward.coop.
Taking prescription medication should not be a scary task. The staff at St. Paul Corner Drug makes certain you know everything about your prescription medication before you leave the pharmacy. Knowing what to expect and when and how to take your prescriptions gives you the confidence to safely take your medication and maintain good health. Should additional questions arise, we are here to help sort things out. St. Paul Corner Drug, pharmacy the way it should be, at stpaulcornerdrug.com.
Hey, it's Patrick for Zero Res. With the warmer weather, you might be noticing your allergies picking up. And while outdoor allergies are annoying, indoor allergies can be just as bad. Did you know as many as 1 in 5 Americans suffer from allergies caused by particles frequently found inside most homes? One of the best things you can do to relieve indoor allergies is by having your air ducts cleaned, and Zero Res can help. Right now, you can take $75 off your air duct cleaning when you book your appointment at ZeroResMinnesota.com and say you want the AM 950 special. Plus, you can also get 3 rooms of carpet Zero Resified from the Twin Cities' #1 carpet cleaner starting at just $149, plus a free room of fiber protector. A $60 savings. And Zero Res can clean more than just your home. Ask about getting your business professionally cleaned too. So breathe healthy, happy, and clean with Zero Res by booking your appointment at ZeroResMinnesota.com to get 3 rooms of carpet cleaned for just $149 and get $75 off your air duct cleaning. That's ZeroResMinnesota.com.
Hi, I'm Rachel Shamblat. My dad is Dr. Scott Shamblat from Shamblat Family Dentistry. A lot of people are afraid of the dentist, but you don't have to be. My dad makes going to the dentist comfortable and even fun. He won't be mad if you haven't seen a dentist in a long time. He just wants to take care of you and your teeth. If you don't see my dad, please see another dentist. Take care of your teeth because they're the only ones you get.
Shamblat Family Dentistry in Hopkins and St. Paul. Find them online at shamblatfamilydentistry.com or call 1-800-FIX-MY-TEETH.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. Partly cloudy tonight with a low of 54, then a slight chance of showers on Tuesday with a high of 72. The Great Wall has been serving up authentic Peking and Sichuan favorites for over 40 years. The Great Wall is located on France Avenue along the Minneapolis Edina City line. Check out their menu at greatwallrestaurant.us.
Hi, this is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. I'm Ho Chunk, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by MN350, a grassroots organization fighting for climate justice.
Hey, we're always happy to have Dr. Antony Stately, CEO at the Native American Community Clinic, on. And we just like to rap, talk a little bit and see what's going on and see what he's heard on NPR and amplify that over our progressive airways here, right? So welcome, Dr. Stately.
Good evening. How are you?
Too early to tell. Your segment's just starting, but prior to that, pretty good.
Well, I was like a little worried there because you said we were going to rap, and I'm not all that great at spitting poetry. But
you're probably better than I am, yo.
I can spit other things like tobacco and a few other things, but not poetry. That's my nephew's job.
Right on.
Yeah. So, what do you want to talk about today? COVID-19 seems to be fairly stable in our community, in our state. We have some fluctuations in cases and things like that, but not significantly much greater than it has been over the last few weeks. But it is, I think, important to mention that it's still out there. And then in fact, the BA4 and the BA5 variant, which is the sort of the more recent variants, those are twice as high as they were last week. So that there's the expectation, I think, that in the coming weeks those variants are quite virulent as well. But and things we don't know about them yet, right? So every time there's something new, there's some things we don't know about it. We have to sort of kind of like wait until we get enough data to be able to say, like, with some amount of confidence that the virus behaves in a specific way, so we can tell people what it looks like. But we're kind of still in that process. I've known a handful of people myself over the last 3 weeks who tested a lot with at-home kits, and those things came back negative, and then they took a PCR test and found out that they were positive, suggesting that maybe some of the at-home kits are a little less sensitive in being able to detect the variants or the virus. One of my relatives said she doesn't think that she might have not gotten the right result because she's afraid to shove the thing up there as far as it's supposed to go. A little swab thingy. I told her, come over, I'm a doctor, and I'm not afraid to shove it up there. I'll shove it up.
There you go. Hey, before I ask you this question, Ogimaa has a really good one in the in our chat, and it sounds like you got a dog chewing on a big bone in the background there. But I want to just give.
Yeah, he's like he's being salty because he's in his crate. He was barking at the people playing baseball in the park. So.
Oh, geez, he's salty. Well, I just want to, before we get going too far, is just to thank Wendy about her last piece, the last segment. It's hard to talk about that, and it's also hard to talk about wellness checks for young ones. And Dr. Stately, that's kind of what Ogimaa was talking about here.
Yeah, I think it's very important to get those wellness checks for your children. They've had a very, very difficult year. Battling through all of the stress and all of the challenges of this last year with our pandemic and a number of other things. And it's been, our mental well-being is one of the things, our mental and emotional well-being is one of the things we as Americans particularly, and also just lots of human beings just do not pay enough attention to those conditions. It's a lot more easy to pay attention, I think, to physical injuries or, aches and pains that we sort of kind of like impact our sensory experience of our bodies physically, because they're so much more obviant, right? And doing those things to ensure that our children are feeling emotionally well, psychologically sound, spiritually and socially well is really important. And taking people in for those wellness checks around their mental well-being is really important, particularly in the most recent sort of weeks with all these mass shootings that have been happening. And
right.
The things that happen in Uvalde hearken and pull on the impact of the memories of things that have happened before them that are similar. Those of us that live in Minnesota will remember that, there was a mass school shooting in Red Lake, about 14 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
13 or 14 years ago. And those things, events like those things happening at the larger societal level will impact us and our children more broadly than we realize, just because it happens somewhere else or really far away, or the circumstances perhaps are very different to the things that have happened in our own community. It's important to recognize that, anytime that children see or hear of stories in which children are killed in the way in which those children were killed, that's horrific. And, children will be having some challenges with that as a result. And so I think going in for, not just your vaccines and your boosters, the kind of things that you need to be able to stay healthy and stay well, make sure that you don't get, the flu and the chickenpox and all the other kinds of things that you can as a young person. Getting your emotional and mental child checkup is just as important. Checking in with them, and there's simple ways that you can do it as a parent. Just ask them, like you can ask children somaticize. They're not usually going to come in and say like, I don't feel well, or I've been having nightmares, or they're not going to usually say those things sometimes. So we as parents have to ask them things like, how are you sleeping? How is your eating? Are you noticing being afraid or anxious about, being out and about in public or being at school? You can ask them questions that will sort of help you to begin to think about or sort of like tease out whether or not they're having a difficult time with adjusting. Because it has really been it's been a stressful couple of years, right? For us as adults. And we have theoretically much better coping mechanisms than they do. And so recognizing that it's important to sort of check our kids about that is really helpful.
As you're talking, Dr. Stately, I'm trying to think. I'm 61 years old, and I'm trying to think what it was like when I was young, because these these kind of things that we can have for our young ones and even our older ones with therapy and things like that, it was not a commonplace. I think the kids now are getting barraged with 24/7 news and social media and things like that, where I was walking around clueless pretty much my whole young life about what was going on. And then when things were where there was some trauma in my life, I think I reacted in a way of smoking weed or abusing alcohol and drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think each generation has its thing. When I'm talking to my kids, sometimes I'm telling them about the way in which I grew up. Like there was certainly enough other forms of violence in my life as a small child that I don't share the particulars of that with them because that's not important. The important thing is to help them to understand, like, I've had difficult times too, and these are the ways that I managed them. And I've shared that with them as well. I talked to them about, like, I actually have been really transparent with my kids and said, I started drinking when I was 11 years old, mostly because it was like around me, like it was fairly easy to acquire. Started smoking shortly thereafter too. And there was, so I talked to them about my own experiences, and I don't have to share the actual stories about the horrific events that have happened in my life. I talked to them about being a boarding school survivor without having to tell them specifically the impacts of those things and the actual events. But I tell them things like, I didn't make the best choices sometimes because I didn't have therapy available to me. I certainly, nobody talked about going to counseling or seeing a therapist. Right. When I was a child, it was like,
I remember.
I remember what they told me to do to get better. They're like, "Go outside and play."
I remember friends going to treatment in high school and me feeling bad for them, and going, I can't wait until they get back and smoke a joint with them or something to have them, welcome them back, and that's how I skewed my thinking was back in the day. That especially with treatment and younger people going to treatment in the 70s, like that first wave of young people, I didn't know how to react because I was a big partier.
Me too. I was like, I started drinking when I was 11. I started using some of the more harder stuff by the time I was 16. By the time I was 17 years old, my second year of college, I was bombing out of college, private college, or college, not even just, completely like bombing life, mostly because of my drug and alcohol use. And then my first time trying to go to a meeting, I was, 17, almost 18 years old, I think. And my sister took me to a meeting, and I sat through the meeting, and I was like, these people are weird. I don't want to ever come back here again. They're strange. They were crying and beating pillows. And I was like, this is off the wall nuts, right? So this was like actually the early 80s. So I was like, I'm not coming back here.
Wow.
I think the point of it is that, I found other ways to get to where I needed. People recognized that I needed help, and they reached out and asked me too. They were like, they said things like, "We love you, we care about you, we're scared for you." And I think that's part of it, is recognizing also that we all have a responsibility, to care for one another and to reach out to our relatives when we see them hurting and struggling, right? Especially those of us who've been given a gift, right? And if we're sober and clean, we've been given a gift.
We got to talk more about this after this break. I think we've landed on something that's really interesting. We'll be right back after this short break. You're listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake.
Stay with us.
Hey, Wendy, what are we doing for dinner after the show?
How about we go to J. Selby's on 169 Victoria Street in St. Paul? They have a delicious plant-based menu that's compassionate and environmentally sustainable.
I'm getting their spot-on vegan Big Mac. the dirty secret.
You can pick up and they deliver within a 5-mile radius, or you can call them at 651-222-3263 or visit jselbys.com.
Well, you sold me one. Let's go order at J. Selby's tonight.
I'm hungry.
Minnesota has the only original wolf population in the continental United States, and 80% of Minnesotans believe the wolf should be protected. Howling for Wolves is asking Minnesotans to respect our true wildlife manager, the wolf. Their survival is critical to our ecosystems, our communities, and even our economy. As highly intelligent animals with strong social bonds, Minnesota wolves deserve to be protected and admired. Learn more at howlingforwolves.org. Let's live and let howl.
Are you nervous to go to your mailbox and see one more past due mortgage bill? You could qualify for financial assistance through Home Help MN if you have fallen behind on your mortgage payments due to the pandemic. This Minnesota housing program even has money available to help with other past due mortgage-related expenses. Learn more at homehelpmn.org or call 1-800-388-3226.
Hey, Ogimaa, I've been hearing a lot about this term, climate justice. What is that?
Climate justice is recognizing that the negative impacts of climate change don't affect all people equally. It also means transitioning from a fossil fuel-based economy to a more sustainable future. MN350 is one of the groups that's pushing for this transition to protect our futures. You can even get involved too.
That's great, especially since I'm concerned about pipeline projects like Line 3. How can I help MN350?
Just find them on Facebook or visit mn350.org.
Welcome back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of the show is brought to you by the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition.
Thank you, Wendy. Hey, we're here with Dr. Stately, the CEO of at the Native American Community Clinic here in the Twin Cities. And we were talking a little bit about, well, a lot about mental health, and also, you know, wellness checks for children, and especially the mental health with the continued mass shootings. And then we got a little into our recoveries. It was interesting, Dr. Stately. I really liked the first meeting I went to. I thought this would be great if we had passed around a joint or something and started talking about our feelings and steps and everything. And I was still a young and dumb, and I was a lot of people's. I know it's hard for you to believe this, Dr. Stately, but Wendy believes this. I was a lot of people's tolerance tester when I first showed up.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I have a feeling that you still sort of kind of perform that function.
Thank you for saying that. I was going to, but I'm glad you said it.
In a good way.
So, Robert, so people who don't know it, you should let them know that you are sober these days, and just so that they know that, because not everybody who's listening realize that. They might think that you still are using.
Yeah.
Because I'm goofy or what? But yeah, I haven't did any drugs or drinking since November 9th, 1984, and for that I am grateful.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been sober since October 27th of 1985, and it was hard. You know, it was hard because I was so young when I tried to stop, right? And so the first time I ever went into an AA meeting, my sister took me to a meeting. I felt like everybody in the entire meeting was like an old man or old woman. They were like, you know, there were a lot of them that were really old, like they had, gray hair and big long St. Nicholas beards. And the meetings I went to, I didn't see a lot of Native people in them. So that it was hard for me to sort of relate at that point in my life, because I was like, these guys are decades older than me. They are all white, they're all old, and we don't have a lot in common, right? I was paying attention to the wrong things. And I also was 17 or 18 years old the first time I went, and I was a young gay man, right? Struggling and trying to figure out who I was in the world. And nobody in those meetings looked like me, or I couldn't relate to them all. And I remember the first meeting I went to, a handful of the first meetings I went to, people were, they were talking about their feelings. And in my opinion, at the time, I was like, wow, these guys are over emoting. I didn't use that word, but I was just like, this is freaky. We don't talk like this in my family. We don't so it was like big cultural differences. Right. And so I think what was important for me was I didn't get sober the first time. I probably even get sober the first 7 times I went to meetings. But the last time I went, I was just desperate enough, but also I had a wake-up call really early in my sobriety, and it was like I looked around, and most of the people in my family were using at that time, drinking and still, engaging in, crazy behavior, in my opinion. And a lot of my friends in the gay community, they were using alcohol. Some of them were starting to use very hard drugs. I had people shooting up in my car while we're driving to the bar. And it dawned on me at some point, I was like, if I don't leave here, I'm likely to end up dead. And so I did what was really, really hard. I left the community for like a really long time. I went to California, and I found recovery there. And I found recovery in meetings where people were really, they resembled things that meant something to me, right? And I think the part of it that's important here is that you tell people, you might not get it the first time. You might not even get the 10th time, but you just got to stand back up and keep trying. And you keep going to enough meetings until you find the one that you feel like you fit in. And you find the one that's sort of like where you feel at home. And then let those people love you and support you until you can love yourself and support yourself.
I don't think anybody gets it the first time, and I think that's really important to talk about. And I remember
it's really rare, very rare.
I remember leaving meetings and smoking a joint and going, that was wonderful, man. Everyone was so cool. I just feel like really in the groove. And a friend of mine who basically saved my life told me, the old carrot in front of the rabbit kind of thing, told me I can't get a medallion if I'm still smoking pot. And I went, what? I want a medallion.
Yeah.
It was like crazy.
Yeah, because those were the things that were cool, I guess, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, I think this is a really important thing for us to talk about, because like over the last 2 or 3 years, over the last several years, quite frankly, opiate overdoses in the Native community have been significantly higher than they have been for any other community in the state. 6 to 7 times higher than the rest of the population of the state. Crazy data, right? And then in addition to that, like over the 2 years, the last 2 years during COVID-19, those rates more than doubled and tripled the rates that we had been seeing over a period of time. And so it's just really, really critical that we do things to take care of ourselves, that we do things to take care of people that we love. Even to take care of people that we don't love, because every human life is important, right? We see people on the street or living in encampments, struggling, and they reach out their hand for help. Take their hand and offer some type of assistance to them, because every single one of them, no matter who they are and whatever condition they're in, is a relative to us. And there's lots of spaces and places for them to show up. The clinic I'm a servant leader of, we have a very robust MAT, medication-assisted treatment program for people who are struggling with opiate use disorder. We have harm reduction services where we give anybody and everybody in naloxone, and we teach them how to use it so they can resurrect and bring people back from an opiate overdose. We have culturally centered treatment programs where we're folding traditional and cultural teachings into the treatment program, not just AA or NA. So we try to our best to meet people where they're at, and I think that's the most important thing, is just to remember to be a good relative. The people, I remember being not clean and high and drunk all of the time, and feeling so disconnected from the people that I loved. It was painful. I was dying inside, right? If I wasn't dying actually, ipso de facto. Try to, if you can, try to put yourself in the shoes and in the feet of our relatives, and understand that they want to feel connected. The opposite of addiction is actually connection, right? It's not actually. And so doing things that we can, no matter how small they are, it doesn't cost anybody to say a prayer. It doesn't cost a cent to say a prayer. Pray for somebody, right? All those things are really important, because we are so vulnerable right now at this moment in time. And we have some of the highest rates of opiate use disorder. We have some of the highest rates of overdose. We forget that people are actually also committing suicide. We have some of the highest rates of suicide. All really important things to check in on our relatives and ask them how they're doing.
Well, Dr. Stately, really a good conversation as always. Really appreciate it. So much to think about. I felt like I kind of was at a meeting, because when you would say something, I would think of something that pertained, and really, really good talk. I want to, Peony, thank you for being on as always. Wendy, thank you so much for your segment. That was awesome. And Ogimaa, of course, with the news. We're still here. We are the seventh generation.
Free Leonard Peltier. Stop line 3 and line 5.
Hey, folks, this is Pat Quitelo along with Kirk Banks.